Hey y'all, and welcome to Geospatial Experiences. I'm your host, Melissa Mayo, and I'm an Esri engineer on the product team. This podcast focuses on the application of geographic information. Let's go on a journey together with some of my amazing coworkers, along with Esri customers, partners, and distributors who are doing really cool work in the field of GIS. Today I'm joined by Diana Benedict with Denver Water. Hi, Diana.
Hi, Melissa. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good, thank you.
Thank you so much for chatting with me today. You and your team are doing some really interesting work. So I'm excited to learn more about your journey and everything. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start out with you like I do with everybody else. And I really want to know about you. So tell me about yourself, your background, your journey here, and what you do for Denver Water.
All right. Well, first, I was actually born in Colombia, South America, and I immigrated to the United States when I was 6. I grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is just outside of New York City. And for as long as I could remember, I always wanted to be a scientist. So I attended Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and then I eventually transferred actually to a small private college in Tennessee called Tusculum College. And while I was there, I played volleyball for them on a scholarship. And I also obtained my undergraduate degree in biology. While I was in East Tennessee, I actually went and visited the mountains of North Carolina, specifically the Boone area, and I just fell in love with those beautiful mountains. The Appalachian Mountains are so gorgeous. So after I got my undergrad, I actually decided to move out there and establish residency. And I attended Appalachian State University in Boone, and I just loved it there. It was so much fun. I had such a wonderful experience. That's actually where I started learning about GIS. Even though I was doing a Master of Science, I did end up taking some GIS classes, and just it was wonderful.
That's amazing. I love to hear that you started from a biology background and then you kind of, experienced and explored with GIS, from there. And so you traveled the journey that way. It's always interesting to me to find out how do people, experience GIS for the first time and how do they get into the field, I guess is a good way of putting it.
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting journey,
Mhm.
because while I was doing my master's in Appalachian State University, I was actually working with these amazing animals. They're called tardigrades. I don't know if you ever heard of them. Have you ever heard of tardigrades?
I haven't heard
Oh
of
my
tardigrade.
gosh, they are wonderful. For anyone that's listening, you should just go Google them. They've
I was about
actually
to
been in
say
the
a
news.
Google search now.
They've actually been in the news, and recently they're virtually indestructible organisms. They can survive the vacuum of space. They're so cool. And what I ended up doing was actually mapping their quote unquote brains. So even like early in my career, I was actually doing mapping. So I didn't even realize that I was already a geographer behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Once I got my degree, my major professors, we were kind of talking about, where do I want to go? And I indicated to them that, I wanted to go back and actually go back to the real world
Mhm.
eventually. And when I did that, I felt like I was really lacking in my technical skills, specifically computers. So she's actually suggested Dr. Ruth Dool and Bill Dool. They suggested that I go check out the GIS and go do some, take some GIS classes in the geography department. And I did, and I ended up thinking it was super amazing. And once I really started doing some GIS classes and did like a independent study, I was hooked at that point. I just thought it was so amazing.
Isn't it crazy the things that GIS can help us do? And when you don't know it, you don't realize that the capabilities that it has. You're just kind of, you don't know what you're missing until you find it out. And then once you find it out, it's like gold, isn't it? And you can
Oh,
just do so
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, like when I did GIS, I was like, oh, completely see how this is going to be so beneficial in, in the biology field, not just in so many other disciplines. It's so prolific. It's everywhere, especially nowadays. But while I was in grad school, I also was an adjunct instructor in kind of my last couple of years while I was taking all the GIS classes. I was all done with all my degree courses. So I was able to actually teach a lot of the lectures at Appalachian State. So I had a lot of like experience as an instructor. I taught it both at Appalachian State and also at the college, the community college nearby. So when I started looking for career options, I kept thinking I was going to go do biology, but I didn't. And then I ran across, positions at Esri as an instructor. And when I looked at that, I was like, oh, I have that skill set. I have the background in GIS, maybe not that expertise yet, but I had that background and understanding because I did take some classes, and I also had, the experience of being an instructor. So I ended up moving to Charlotte after, my degree, after my master's of science, and I worked for the Esri Charlotte office. Started off as an instructor and then actually moved as their training coordinator.
That's so interesting. One thing that for me, I think is really important is just the appreciation that people have for GIS. So, you mentioned that you had the background, but maybe not necessarily a lot or, a whole lot of experience in it. But what you did have then was an absolute appreciation for what GIS could do and how it could be applied across different areas. And coupling that with your interest in it and your experience teaching, I'm sure you were an amazing candidate for Esri to pick up. I mean, I can't think, I can't, I can't, I don't know. I just get so excited about it. And I think really, when someone does recognize the breadth of application that GIS has, that's so important. I don't know. I just think that's really, really neat for you too, that you did see that so early.
Having that opportunity, when I was at Esri and learning about all the different clients and, when I was out teaching and being an instructor, I had that opportunity to kind of see, where or how all of our users were utilizing GIS. And I think that that's probably why I ended up deciding to stay in that field and go there, because it really satisfied my analytical side that I had in biology. That's pretty much why I wanted to go into the sciences. But I feel that it also kind of gave me even more that visual aspect and just looking at GIS in general.
So, Diane, I want to go back to your teaching experience a little bit and just ask, when you were teaching with Esri, were you kind of assigned a certain group, or did you really get to go to a lot of different areas and a lot of different people and teach in a lot of different arenas, I guess, and just get exposed to more of the breadth of who's using the technology? It sounded like that was the case. I wanted to double check that I heard that correctly. So does that make sense what I'm asking?
Absolutely, yes. Again,
Okay.
as you could tell, this was a while ago. So
Yeah.
back then, I was actually the training coordinator. So not only was I sending, our instructors out to other areas, I was also sending myself. And we had, like just different training facilities and people, our clients, from Esri, they would go ahead and attend these classes, these kind of on-site classes. So it really depended on who would go in. Like it could have been, I could have been down in Orlando, Florida, teaching a class where there was a whole, there was like about 5 or 6 people that were maybe from Orange County.
That must have been really interesting though for you, because when the students come in and they're in all these different areas and they're learning, you got your curriculum set up and you're teaching something, but they're going to be asking, how do I do this for myself in this area? And how do I do this over here? So you're going to be hearing, you must have, gotten exposed to a lot of different use cases and applications for how they wanted to use it and how they did their business. That must have been really interesting for you. I know.
Yes, it was very interesting to be exposed to so many different use cases for GIS, and that's what led me to become a geospatial consultant. though I really enjoyed my time at the Esri Charlotte office, I did want to move to Denver, Colorado, and so doing so, I accepted a position at a business partner called TSR. And during that time, there was a huge, major shift in the GIS technology, where users were transitioning from ArcInfo to ArcGIS Desktop. There was also utilizing SDE to spatially enable databases such as Oracle and SQL Server. I jumped feet first, working with clients from various organizations, ranging from the public to the private sector, to help them with their geospatial solutions. Though sometimes I felt like I was jumping into the deep end, I initially focused my skills on being an SD administrator and working with the geodatabase design. I also helped users transition from the ArcInfo to ArcGIS Desktop. Sometimes it was using ArcView. Other times it was which products do we use for different use cases, and just kind of helping them out with that type of situation. And I also provided a lot of custom training for our users. I specifically remember working with a client that needed to create a map series in ArcMap so they could print their map books. During this time, not that I didn't see that there were any tools that were out there that allowed users to do this in an automated fashion. This was all done manually, and we would pan over, select a tile that we needed, center on that tile, set the map scale, manually update the layout elements, title, text, all of that until they got that layout exactly the way they wanted. Then we would export that layout to a PDF and move over to the next tile and rinse and repeat. Again, this was a manual process. So as you could see, this was very daunting task to do for a huge tile, for a huge area. At that point, that's where I decided we needed to automate this. Like, I was lazy and I was not going to push that button one more time. So I decided that I wanted to create a custom tool, working with TSR developers and getting a lot of mentorship and support from them. I did a lot of research and found a lot of sample code, used a lot of the Esri documentation, and I was able to create my first ArcMap custom tool using ArcObjects. This tool was, rudimentary in the beginning, but we did end up customizing it and packaging it up for use for later. So as you could see, as a geospatial consultant, it was never dull. My tasks were never dull. I learned so much about the GIS technology. Most importantly, I had that opportunity to see how clients were utilizing GIS. For example, one week I would go visit an engineering firm, teach them how to convert their CAD data into GIS. Another time I would be at a small county organization working with their assessor's office, helping them design their geodatabases and migrate their data. I also started working with the local water companies in the area, and that's really how I got into the water industry. About 20 years ago, I was a contractor for Denver Water, and I was part of a team that transitioned Denver Water from ArcInfo Librarian to ArcSDE. We also helped them with their database design, and we created some custom tools for editing and managing their GIS data. And you remember I was talking earlier about that map series custom tool that I had started working on. Well, we went in and we actually finalized that tool, and we were able to package it, and Denver Water was able to utilize it so they could also do their printing of all of their map books in an automated fashion as opposed to having to do it manually.
Would you say that exposure to all of the different types of people and different use cases for GIS and really getting to learn more about that, was that the best part of that type of role and that kind of experience, or would you say something else would be, what you would kind of remember back as saying as being the best part of it?
No, I really want to say, like, having that opportunity where I really started within GIS as teaching, so that for me, like, when you teach, you have to know it. That was the one thing
Absolutely.
I learned, right? Like, when I was teaching biology, I had already finished all my coursework and I thought I knew biology, but only then did I really know it when I had to start teaching it, because people would ask you questions and you had to be able to answer and so all of that. So then after that, I kind of moved more into the database and the data analysis and understanding the data and how to access it and how to, question it, right? Like how to get answers from it. And then eventually I kind of moved more into like the software development. But I really feel that because of my understanding of the other things that really helped me, where at that point, all I needed to learn was, you know, how do I program this one thing in C sharp, for example, not what does a buffer mean? Like, yeah, I already knew all of that. So that really helps. So yeah, I guess from that perspective, I just really feel like I was very lucky to have had this path to get to where I am now.
I think the fact that you just said all you had to learn was how to program this in C sharp. That's not an easy task. That tells me right there, and everybody else saying that you are not lazy. We're going back to that lazy comment. There's no way you're lazy if you look at it and go, all I got to do is learn how to program this in C sharp. It's fine. It's nothing, like, no, you get in, you dig in, you figure it out, and you make it happen. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So we've been working through your journey and we're heading into because did you shift from being a geospatial component to then move to Denver Water? Is that how you made that transition, or was there something in between?
Yes, Melissa, there was something else in between. I really enjoyed my time working at TSR, and I was there for 9.5 years, and I had such great opportunities and experiences working with them. The company started changing their focus on and direction. So they were no longer doing a lot of GIS consulting. So during that time, shortly after that, I went and I started working as a contractor at the USGS. And yet again, this was another wonderful organization that I had the opportunity to work for. The people there were great, and I was able to work on some really fun and challenging projects. Initially, I was hired to work with the National Hydrography Dataset, and I was part of a team that worked on the NHD GeoEdit tools. These tools are used in the water industry where organizations can sign up to become data stewards and they help maintain the NHD data in their local area. So what we needed to do was to take these NHD Geo Edit tools, our team, and we needed to look at their existing workflows and come up with a better way to do this so that it was easier for these data stewards to edit that NHD data. The first thing we did was we evaluated that database design and we updated it so it was a little simpler for the users to automatically start their work. We also went in and we completely revamped the tooling that we had set using Arc objects inside of ArcMap. We created a suite, like a toolbar that had a suite of tools to help them from downloading the data to uploading and sending the data back to the USGS. After we successfully launched these tools out to the public, I was put on a new pilot project that explored the then new emerging web editing technology. Yeah, obviously right now it's a thing. That's what people do, but back then it was a pretty new type of technology. So I not only needed to look at and ensure that we could edit data, but the most important part was could we edit national data? And with this data is specifically was the structure data for all the 50 states and the U.S. territories for the USGS. Mm. We were able to prove that. And after the pilot project showed that we could edit all that national data on the web, we put together a team of developers to create a crowdsourcing web editing application. And I was so lucky to be part of a team that developed and launched the first national map core web editing application. This application allows citizens to volunteer to sign up and edit the USGS structured data. I actually have been a citizen volunteer since the National Map Corps has first rolled out. recently I've been getting a lot of notifications informing us that there's a new version that's coming out and that's scheduled to be released soon. So like right now you can't go in and utilize it at the moment because they're generating a whole completely new set of tools and functionalities. So I'm really excited to see what type of great work the new developers and everybody there are doing. So I can't wait to see what they're doing.
That was huge though, and I'm like you. I've had a similar experience that you have as far as with the USGS. Anybody that I've met or interacted with or worked with them, they're always amazing. They're doing phenomenal work, and it's always been great. In a previous life, I had some opportunities to work with some of them when I was in emergency management, and so going through that process, we would interact with the USGS from time to time, and they were always great. So
It was a great group of people. And I had worked on the national map core editor, with the team. Shortly after that, I actually was talking with a friend who worked for Denver Water, and and she had mentioned that they were going to be opening up a position, and I was like, oh, I'd love to return back to Denver Water. She kind of convinced me to come back. So I did, and I've been there ever since. So that's kind of how I am now at Timberwater, in that journey.
that's awesome. Isn't it interesting when they convince you to take a new opportunity, right?
Absolutely.
Well, and you never know when you're moving through your career and you're working in different groups and getting exposed to different people. So it's so important to go through those processes and leave a good reputation behind yourself, because you never know when an opportunity like that's going to present itself. You want to do a good job as you're working on those different products, because you just never know what may open up or what other opportunities and that you may have to work with somebody. And so that's, I know that's something that you would always do as far as doing amazing work. And so I'm sure Denver Water was super excited to be able to get you to come back and work with them.
Yeah, I was very excited to get back to work with Denver Water as well, just because, again, I had had so much experience with them. I actually worked with them for 3 years, doing different things for them, from doing that whole big transition to showing this was again like 20 years ago or so, where I was showing them like how to move, how to manage all of their STE, how to administer it. I sat side by side with the person at the time that was going to be taking on that opportunity. And so I just kind of made sure that, we were setting them up for success, right? And that was the main thing, back, 20 plus years ago. And to return back again and see some of that is still kind of there, some of it is deprecated, and that's kind of the next journey that I now have within Denver Water is, looking at moving from, that system to kind of moving us into our new, environment that we want to be in, which of course includes, the utility network is one of the projects that we're working on, which that's going to be a huge shift paradigm for everybody. And so I'm really excited that I'm going to be able to be there we're also looking at kind of moving our database from, Oracle to SQL Server and just moving everything over there. So kind of those two things are really big. Those two projects are really big, and it's going to be exciting that I'm there again to do that, right? There the first time in that transition, and now I'm going to be, here again, and this time as an employee, which is wonderful.
That's amazing. Does it feel kind of full circle-ish for you? Like you're like, I was here before and now I'm back and I get to see it, see them move to the next version of things for the team. So it
Exactly, Melissa. It does. It completely feels like it's a full circle, and I'm just yeah, I'm very excited to kind of see us go through this and be there and help support all of our users, and and ensure that we're doing it in a manner that is best practices.
Mhm. So we're talking about the technology and the shifting and the transitioning. And some of what you've talked about, you've referenced kind of that software transition from a historical perspective as we've moved through, from the beginning of your career and from when you started in GIS to now, there's been different iterations and we keep moving forward with different versions. ArcMap is going away. We got to say our final farewells to ArcMap, and we're moving into a new genre, a new version with with Pro. So I wanted to get your thoughts and talk to you a little bit about kind of that transition for your shop. Have you guys already made the transition, or are you in the process of it? How's that been going for y'all?
We are actually in the process of doing that. It really kind of depends on the team within Denver Water. We have many different types of teams and users so that we support because I'm actually in our IT part of Denver Water. So we really are there to help support, everyone, make sure that our enterprise systems are up and running and just help guide if there's any questions and also help with any custom development or any custom tooling. So as we're kind of moving forward, there's certain users that are definitely going in and just embracing it and just sunsetting, ArcMap, ArcGIS desktop. And then there's other people that can't quite yet, because we do have some very complex workflows to help manage all of our distribution system and our data. So for those folk, they kind of have to still stay in there for all of their editing, but some of them are actually still using Pro for other things like, maybe mapping and other type of functionality for viewing and things like that. So it just really depends. And even now we're actually exploring, this one group, can they, actually move to Pro? Do they actually need to be in ArcMap to do some of their basic editing that they're doing? So we're kind of going through and just trying to start moving people in, but being very deliberate about that. And right now they have both applications to use at their disposal.
So you're just managing, on a case by case basis and making sure they have access to whatever they need to do their job the best that they can. That's what it sounds like.
Exactly, exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. And, we also have like a lot of, services that we stand up. We have a whole entire enterprise GIS that people are also accessing the data that way. And that's also the big push, that we're trying to do is maybe you don't need to be connecting to databases
Mhm.
directly. You can access these through services. All the data is there, and we can even make them, kind of more, more powerful in being able to give them the information that they need and only that information. So, kind of that difference between kind of your editing and then the data that you're actually publishing out to users.
Well, and I feel like too, sometimes people they get used to the way they've always done it and they're comfortable in that space and they're comfortable with how that works. And it's difficult for people to kind of shift into, okay, I can do this in a web-based environment with services, or I can do this in Pro and just connect to services. And this is really all I need, even though I had all this other stuff. I don't really need all this other stuff, but they don't want to admit that sometimes, do they, Diana? They still want all the things.
They do. And that's why right now, at some point we're gonna have to pull, that duct tape off, is what I call it, And
It's worse than a band-aid. It's a
yeah,
full-fledged
it's duct
band-aid.
tape. So I'm
Mhm.
just like thinking, as we kind of move forward, not only is Denver Water really great about providing training, for us, for not just like for, IT, but also for our users and our power users and everything else. We've had some Esri staff come in and do, some training on site to, some folks, can easily go ahead and sign up for online training and everything else in between. So we have that, and also I'm always there. Our team is always there to help our users if they need, assistance. Which you know, my teams is always open, is what I always say, and people are very good about, calling and reaching out and asking questions. And I love it because actually you would think that that reluctance would be greater, and it's not. When I get those calls or when we get a request to help a user out, it's wonderful because to me, I feel like that means that they're trying to move away from kind of that, the older system and really trying to, leverage the new technology and the new, the new paradigm.
It sounds like Denver Water's being you know, proactive but meticulous about how they're moving forward. They're trying to identify the areas that can shift and shift those I don't want to say shift those people first, but you know, look at it and really go, okay, who can we shift now? Who do we need to work through this with a little bit more? What can we do to assist these people in different ways? I mean, it sounds like a very meticulous process that you're going through to be able to make sure people can continue to do their jobs efficiently and effectively and all of that too. So I think that it sounds like you guys are doing a really good job as far as, trying to work through that shift methodically, but still being proactive about, okay, we have to do this, y'all. Like we've got to move. So how do we do this in an organized fashion?
Agreed. Agreed. Yes. That is what our goal is, and that's what we're trying to, to do. Yeah.
So would you say that with the shift or the pain points, I know you were talking about, some people are with their workflows and their work processes, they're having to stay in ArcMap for now because of the way that things have been built. And, I'm sure it's going to take a lot of time to convert some of those processes or move some of those processes forward to Pro. And then you probably have I'm guessing that you have some um, employees who just really like their ArcMap. I used to really like my ArcMap. I'm not going to lie about it. And so some people just really like our arc map. But are those kind of some of the pain points? Or are you seeing some other things come up as you're moving through?
Right. Yeah, I would say the biggest pain point is the first one that you did mention, Melissa, which is, we have systems that we have built that are still there, and we have workflows that are still there, and and moving out of those, finding that time, finding that, the effort that we're all going to have to do, to kind of move into that new system. I believe that as we move into the utility network, that's going to be kind of like one of our big, push, like, okay, that's it. We're moved. That's it. We got to go now. This is all on. This is where we're going. So I think that that's going to be a big push for us, is really like right now where our data is and where our data is going. And when we get there, that's going to be the point where everybody's just going to, just make that plunge, make that, dip in, into Pro.
For the people who have moved to Pro, what are you seeing as the positives? What are they sharing with you that, is it making their lives easier? Are they able to do things more efficiently? What are you hearing the feedback from them on that?
When I work with users with Pro, when they're going through and they're going, hey, how do I go and I get this data that, they're used to seeing? And I'm like, well, you no longer have to actually go connect to our SDE. Why don't you go ahead and access these services? These are the same services that we have for our, web mapping application that we have for all of our, users. So why don't you just use this instead to help you with what you need? So really, I think that paradigm shift where we're really trying to be more proactive about, say, you don't really have to connect anymore to that database. We can just provide you the services, and if there's anything that you really need, why don't we work through that? Like, let's kind of go to that route instead. So I think they're seeing that benefit to where they no longer have to have these templates, or they no longer have to have, these symbology where it has to look exactly like this for their different mapping needs. They now can go in and access those services that already has all that built in for them.
It sounds like that's making it easier for them, but also easier for you in the IT group too, as far as what you're providing for them. It just seems like that shift's making it easier all around from that perspective.
It does.
But
And yes, exactly. And then it also like gets them excited about going out and looking to see what other data is out there and kind of loading it, where it wasn't as simple to be able to do that, within ArcMap, whereas with Pro you can do that. So
that's awesome. That's great. I'm looking at my next questions for you, Diana. I'm thinking about it. So we may have touched on this a little bit, but I still want to ask and kind of get your direct and all around answer to this next one. And it's really, how do you feel the GIS space has changed over the course of your career in it? So we've talked about kind of the technology moving and there's different iterations of it, but I just wanted to see kind of what your thoughts were on that as a question by itself, if that makes sense.
Okay. I think, when you say that, the first thing I think about is no more paper maps.
Yeah. Hmm.
Like, it's a bittersweet. When I was at the USGS, there was the map store, and I was there to see them close it because everything is now in our fingertips, right? Like our phones are so powerful, like we can, GIS is just everywhere, people don't even realize it, right? Like when you tell people, oh yeah, I work in GIS, they're like, oh, what's that? And of course you tell them, you tell them what it is, and geographic information systems, and they're like, huh? And I'm like, okay, do you use Google? Do you use Waze? Yeah, okay, that's GIS. Like, it's
Hmm.
everywhere. You just don't realize it. And so I think that's really for me, that's how GIS has changed. It's even more prevalent. It's even more out there, except for people don't really realize it. Like I had mentioned before, when you were doing GIS back when I started, you kind of had to really know what you were doing. Like you had to go in, you had to type everything out, you had to kind of, go there. And then eventually things became more, using, GUIs, using, front ends and all of that, which is wonderful. So to the point where nowadays GIS data is just everywhere, and it's easily available. It's cheap. It's just kind of everywhere, really, as we kind of look at that. For me, when you're looking at all the current trends in GIS, well, what are we looking at? We're looking at like real-time data is out there, and it's big data. I mean, it's, we are, looking at data that is just so readily available. And then with that, we also have, the miniaturization of all of our, devices and sensors, which is making it even more readily available, to the point where, it's now a reality, right? Like having these self-driving vehicles is a reality. The drones as well, like all of this data, all of this is really embedding GIS into just about everything these days. When you're looking at all the new technology, we are really kind of embedding GIS into that. This location, is everywhere. And I think that, when we're looking at kind of how has GIS space changed, it's changed dramatically. And part of that is because the underlying technology has changed dramatically, right? Like, like I said, our phones are more powerful than when I first started doing GIS with those computers that we had. So,
Yeah.
I'm only kind of thinking, the possibilities are going to be endless as we kind of move forward into the future.
Hmm. I love that. I think that was great, Diana. I'm glad you kept talking. That was gold. Totally gold. Really, my last question is: do you have any final thoughts today before we part ways? Is there anything else you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover, or is there anything that you had in mind that you want to share?
I guess as kind of like we look forward, into the future, like, where we're looking at with GIS, and really technology in general, as we're looking at things like artificial intelligence and machine learning and cloud, and mobile devices and everything else. I just I'm very excited about that, but I gotta say, just a little bit perspective, I'm a little nervous, it's a little kind of, I don't know, how do I say it? Like, you gotta like kind of take a little bit of a breath going, location, like my geolocation of where I am, that's actually personal data. That can be, depending on where you are, right? That is private data. And so just as with, AI, and everything else, like I think at some point, it's like our technology is getting ahead of everything else, like, the security and the privacy and all of that. And, I'm just hoping that eventually kind of everything will come in to
Mhm.
place, and and we'll have some better guidance around that, and and address some of those possible concerns. But overall, like the thought of, someday, having my car drive me around and having it be like a norm, not just like oh, that's like so cool, but
Yeah.
having it be a norm. That's really exciting to the idea of, our packages being delivered by drones, again, kind of exciting, kind of cool. And as we're like kind of looking forward into the future, it's exciting to see
Well,
that that's
it
where GIS is going. Like that's part of GIS.
feels like the Jetsons are happening for us, right?
Oh yeah, I can't tell you how many times I wished I had that little mask that, that the mom, I can't remember her name right now, that she would put on before she'd do like a little video call. I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
where's that mask?
My robot vacuum is named Rosie. I just want Rosie, okay, to come around and clean my house for me. That's what I want.
Oh, I agree. Think about it.
But
That's
I
also it's going to be GIS.
yeah, exactly. We need ArcGIS indoors to do the mapping because my robot vacuum bangs into stuff. And I was like, can we get some ArcGIS indoor action happening here?
That's fun.
But seriously, when you're talking about AI machine learning, it is, for me too, it's concerning. It's super exciting, but it is concerning, to just think about the possibilities are endless for what it could potentially do. And, just let's put some guardrails on it a little bit and, make sure we're good to go with this before we just go out all willy-nilly with things. So kind of like you with the driving the car driving itself. I'm a control freak, so it's going to take me a minute before I'm okay with my car driving me. But one day, that'd be great.
Agreed.
So, Diana, I hear that Denver Water is leading the nation in your lead service line replacement efforts. Can you tell us about that initiative? I would really love for us to explore how GIS supports that.
Yes, Melissa, thank you for asking. We are one of the organizations where instead of adding the orthophosphates into our water, Denver Water reviewed the the positive and the negative to doing that, and instead we opted for a 15-year program that goes through and replaces all of the lead service lines that are in our Denver Water distribution system. Now, again, to note that these lead service lines are not owned by Denver Water. They are actually owned, property owned. So to do this, it is a program where people do not have any direct additional costs to this. And instead, what we're doing is we're going through and identifying where are all of the lead service lines that are in our system. It's actually, we have 5 different components that are part of this. The first part is a corrosion control. And several years ago, what they did was they actually increased Denver Water, increased the pH so that it would help reduce the amount of lead that would go into our customers' water. Then the other part is the lead service line inventory, where that one is building a database where we're trying to identify where are all the customers that have potential lead service lines. And then we also have a filter program for all those customers that potentially have lead service lines. Denver Water is they sent out filters so that all the customers can start using these filters to ensure that they are not getting lead, that, people are not drinking any possible water that could be tainted with lead. And then we also then at last is having that communication and that outreach to have people understand what that means and what they can do. So from those, as we're talking about GIS, how is GIS actually benefiting this? GIS, when we're looking at that lead service line inventory, our GIS admin team, now remember, I'm part of the GIS and the IT, where I support a lot of these, where we support a lot of our internal Denver Water users. For our GIS admin team, they're the ones that came up with models to determine how and who potentially has these lead service lines. As we're kind of going through that, initially we had about 80,000 possible lead service lines that were identified. And then after using additional criteria in with our GIS data and with other GIS data sources, we were able to basically bring it down to about 64,000, which is a huge amount, when you start thinking about, who is actually has the potential and sending out all the filters and all that communication. Also, the other part of our GIS is determining the work areas. We have a contractor that we also work with, and between that and our GIS admin team, they work on trying to figure out where are all the areas that we can start working on. Again, Denver Water has about 1.5 million customers. So figuring out where are we going to go first is really important. Areas, such as our schools and the lower income locations, which unfortunately tend to have higher percentage, of these lead service lines in some of the older neighborhoods. There was a lot of different criteria that we had to take into account. In addition, work areas as far as going in and digging in our streets, right? Our paving data. So as we take into account all of this information, models were built to help identify where are all the areas that we're going to work on. And because it's a 15-year program, you just kind of go through each year and hit the different areas so that they can go in and do this lead replacement for all of our customers. The last part is the collaboration and outreach is also part of GIS as we're looking at that process, in that users can go into our denverwater.org website and they can go look and find out whether or not their property has potential lead service line, or whether it has already been replaced or any of that. And that's using our GIS Online cloud solution web mapping application, where you just type in your address, it'll zoom you in, just like you would expect any GIS web application to do. And then in-house, we also have some dashboards that our GIS admin team has created to help with showing what type of work was done this year, how many houses and properties were actually replaced, and give us an idea of the picture, what we've done and what we have coming up.
As I'm listening to you, Diane, I'm just thinking about this. This feels like such a huge project and initiative overall. I mean, it sounds like, you guys are having to look at so many different areas. You're having to look at so many different criteria. And it seems like GIS is just really helping you, and the different applications associated with GIS is helping you approach it comprehensively and methodically as well, and be able to make some decisions based off the information that you can feed in that might either be more difficult without it, or you might not be able to make as educated even of a decision without being able to have that layering technique and being able to run those models. Is that a correct assumption on my
Yes,
part? Mhm.
absolutely, Melissa. When you look at Denver Water was originally, established in 1918, so some of these records were not digital. They were paper
Mhm.
copies. This data was not maintained in a digital format. So having to go back and look at any like master plumber records or what people have done in the past, like is it a new build now, and all that information needed to be taken into account, and then having to go back and maintain this data and now keep it up to date. We had to make some changes to our customer data and to our GIS data so that we can go ahead and now we can maintain this data and keep it up to date so that in the future we can go back and reference this information.
How helpful has it been to be able to tie the various different products and applications in with your GIS? You know, you've mentioned the dashboards, and you mentioned being able to have the public viewer. I can't remember if you mentioned if you guys are using the kind of the field maps and the field apps piece of it for the field work or not, but having all these different parts and pieces kind of tying in, and it's not just a desktop GIS person doing the work. You've got everybody from field all the way up to upper management, and then the public as well, able to see the version of what's going on that they really need to see and really need to utilize. How helpful has that been for a project that of this size, and such a big initiative with such important undertones and important reasons behind doing it? It seems like having all those different parts and pieces and being able to tie in would be super helpful. But I wanted to see what your thoughts were on it.
It has been super helpful, and thank you for bringing that up. I did forget to mention that we also have a mobile solution for our field personnel that go out, and we have work orders that get created that are all integrated within all of our systems that integrate with our customer data and our GIS, and and then all the work that is actually being done so that we can maintain all that information. And then we have we have an in-house GIS web mapping application, and all of this data is displayed, and users are able to, select the data that they need, and then on top of that, show all of the paving data for all the paving futures and moratoriums. So really just being able to integrate all the different sources and put them in together has been very, very beneficial.
Think it's so cool that Denver Water's doing this because, as you mentioned, these aren't Denver Water's lines. Like, these aren't lines that Denver Water owns, and so they see the public need, and they see the need that this needs to happen for public safety, for just as doing fundamentally a doing the right thing type initiative. And then on top of going through all of this work and all this effort to actually do the physical line replacement, they're sending out water filters to people in the meantime, because this is going to be a lengthy process, and they're trying to protect the community that much more. I don't know, that just kind of blows me away a little bit, Diane. I think that's amazing that Denver Water's doing that.
Yes, I have to say I am both an employee at Denver Water, and I'm also a customer. And I am very proud of the work that they're doing. It's just, to me, it feels really great to know that my old home, built in the 1890s, potentially has lead service line. And so even though the first thing I did was when I moved in was request a lead test, that's still not a guarantee. So knowing that I have these filters, knowing that in the future my home will be slated to be checked completely, both inside and outside. And then if they do find a lead service line, that they are going to replace that for me. That's wonderful. And I'm very proud that Denver Water has opted to go that route.
So I do want to back up just a little bit, Diana. So we're going to take it and put this next question back in because I thought of something as I was chatting. Is that okay?
Oh, that'd be fun. Let's try it out.
Okay. It's about conferences. So and you mentioned to us before we started chatting that you're going to a conference this year. So are you a regular conference attendee? I guess that's my correct word. Attendee. And when you go, how do you prepare for a conference? What are you hoping to get out of it? What kind of preparations do you make when you're planning to go to a conference? So does that kind of make sense?
It does.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say something in that I perceive the developer summit to actually be more training,
Mhm.
where whereby on that, there is so much information that is provided to us by the developers and the architects, to the point where you can go and you can ask questions and get answers. So yes, I actually we do prepare a lot for that because we recognize that opportunity of being able to talk to different people in the different islands there. So we actually come prepared with a lot of questions. The last
That's
time I went, which was a couple of years ago, there was a little bit of a teasing as, "Oh, here she comes again." I'm like, "Oh, I got questions."
oh yeah, absolutely. You should do that. That's what we're here for, Diana. Absolutely, you should do that.
So
Right.
yes, we do. We prepare for it and we come, with questions and examples and a list of what sessions we want to attend and so on.
Do you prepare differently for the developer summit versus maybe going to the UC or one of the other conferences, or do you have a different kind of strategy, or is that just sort of your approach no matter what conference you're going to?
Oh, I actually don't really go to the other conferences because
Okay, okay.
I really, my goal is to actually go to the summit,
Mhm.
developer summit. So, obviously, we don't want to be going to every single event. So, if
Yeah.
there is
Mhm.
a local conference, I probably do not prepare in that same fashion.
Mhm.
But I'd still, prepare, look at like kind of the attendees and the sessions and mark all the ones I want to go to and stuff like that. Mhm.
No, I think it's great that, for that you prepare. And if I know a lot of people that really do like the developer summit in particular, or they'll like MGIS, or they prefer the UC, different strokes for different folks kind of situation. It
Mhm.
just kind of what people want to get out of it. And people really like the developer conference because they can go and talk to the developers. They can go and really get some of their questions answered, and can get in depth on some of the things that they can talk about there. So I know a lot of people take your approach and prefer the developer summit for some of those reasons. So I
Right.
think
And
it.
I mean, I've been to the, the UC and that's been really fun too, in the
Mhm.
past, but like if they say you got to choose one,
Yeah,
that's
for
where I'm
sure, for sure.
at.
Well, and I think it's great too that you and your team think about what you need ahead of time and get your examples together and go with, kind of a plan of attack for let's get these solutions for what we've been struggling with while we're there. We're going to learn, we're going to sit through these sessions and find out more about how we can make our business processes better, how we can improve our methodology, but we want to go talk to people one on one and go, this is our problem. This is what we're trying to do. This is where we're stuck. Can y'all help us? And I think if more people did that and really were proactive about having that prepped, and a ton of people are, but the more people that do that, I think you really can get amazing conversations with some incredibly smart people when you go to these things and go to the islands, and you can get some answers that you might not be able to get otherwise, and just having that direct access. I think just in my mind, coming like when I was a customer too, if I can snag an Esri person and just talk to them about what my woes are, it just seemed like it was so much easier and so much more direct of getting an answer in a question than other routes.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it's wonderful that Denver Water supports us in
Yes.
being able to attend there and recognize that, that we are that value that we are getting when we go there. It's just, it's wonderful that we have that opportunity. And then also that we are able to not just ask all those questions, like you said, but we're able to network and we're also to put
Mhm.
faces to names and it just, I think overall, it's just a great way for us to kind of continue to move forward and stay up to date and make those decisions that we talked about earlier, like when do we move? When do we, transition over? Why are we going to have to stay for a little while with this other system? And just kind of help us answer those questions and help us to kind of make those better informed decisions.
Well, and when you mentioned the networking, that's a huge piece of it too, because you can meet other people who are potentially either already going through the process or have already gone through it, can give you some, roadblocks or some heads up on, hey, we hit this snag, or hey, this went really well for us. And it gives you somebody to talk to too when you get back to your office and are trying to work through it and go, hey, what did y'all say you did again? Can you walk me through this again? Or, what are your thoughts on this before I, head down this path? It gives you people to talk to, outside of Ezra too, that are going through the same processes as well.
Agreed.
Yeah. So this interview was especially fun for me because I didn't know Diana before we started working on this podcast episode. She came to me highly recommended by several people who knew of her experience and work ethic. They felt like she would bring a great conversation to our lineup. She was so sweet and excited to participate. Her story is one that I feel like will resonate with many people, as she didn't have a straight path to GIS. Diana was so dedicated and focused on doing a good job for us. She really wanted her messaging to come through well. I found her to be intriguing, and she's so very passionate about her work at Denver Water. One of the best elements of this podcast has been the unexpected common ground I find with the guests, whether I've known them for years or if they're a new friend who I'm just now getting to know. I enjoyed my time with Diana very much, and I hope you find her journey just as interesting as I did. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. We have another great guest lined up for you next time, so come back for more GIS journeys with us on Geospatial Experiences. That wraps up today's episode. Please feel free to reach out with your comments, or if you have an interesting topic that you would like to hear, please let us know. Thanks again for your time, and tune in for our next podcast.